welcome to this deep dive. I want you to imagine, just for a second, that we are sitting in a strategic war room. Spread out on the table in front of us is a map of the entire country, and dotted all over this map are red pins.
Thousands of them, actually.
Yeah, thousands of them. Each pin represents prime real estate, massive factory complexes, sprawling office buildings. But here's the catch. They are all completely empty, untouched, frozen.
Right, and today's mission is about unlocking the billions trapped in that frozen national capital.
Exactly. We're looking at how the government is fundamentally restructuring its physical footprint to fund national development. Specifically, we are diving into the National Land Management Corporation, the NLMC, and the Breakthrough 2025 accelerated frameworks targeting public sector enterprises.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is. When I first looked at this data, my immediate thought was that we are gearing up for the biggest nationwide estate sale in history. But that surfaces a massive logistical nightmare. How do you actually appraise a government factory that has been locked shut for 30 years? And more importantly, how do you bypass the bureaucratic labyrinth to actually get it sold?
Well, looking at this as just a mega estate sale kind of misses the underlying strategy. We are witnessing a profound structural governance shift here. This is a targeted maneuver designed to solve a systemic inefficiency where public capital is, essentially, held hostage in non-core assets.
Held hostage is a good way to put it.
Right. Think about it in terms of national growth. When the government's money is tied up in a crumbling, idle building, it cannot be deployed for critical infrastructure, healthcare, or technology. It is pure dead weight dragging down the broader economic engine.
To truly grasp the sheer scale of that dead weight, you really have to look at the baseline context from the Economic Survey 2021-22. Central Public Sector Enterprises, or CPSEs, were sitting on approximately 3,400 acres of unused or underused land.
And non-core assets, yeah.
All right, 3,400 acres. Right. Instead of just reading that as a statistic on a balance sheet, picture this. That is roughly 4 times the size of New York's Central Park, just scattered as concrete ghosts across the country.
Which forces the government's hand, ultimately. The structural problem demanding a solution here is the strategic disinvestment and the closure of loss-making or non-core CPSEs. We are talking about massive legacy entities, BSNL, MTNL, HMT Ltd, BPCL.
You cannot cleanly restructure a sprawling government business or finalize its books if you have no mechanism to process its physical leftovers.
Precisely. It becomes an anchor. If a telecom company is failing and you want to shut it down or pivot its operations, well, you are legally stuck if you still own the massive empty factories it used to operate in.
And cutting that anchor requires a highly specialized tool, right? Because the idle real estate was creating a hard bottleneck for broader economic reform. Without a dedicated mechanism to value, clear, and transfer that land, the actual corporate restructuring of these enterprises simply could not move forward.
Yeah, the government realized that managing telecommunications and managing commercial real estate require 2 completely different skill sets.
Let's cement the foundational data here, because the institutional architecture is crucial to understanding how this tool functions. The entity built to execute this is the National Land Management Corporation.
The NLMC, right. It was incorporated on June 3, 2022 as a wholly government-owned company.
And the chain of command tells you everything about its strategic importance. The NLMC doesn't sit under urban development. It operates under the administrative control of the Department of Public Enterprises, the DPE, squarely within the Ministry of Finance.
So it is treated as an economic engine, not just a property manager.
Exactly. Let's look at its capital structure. Its initial authorized share capital is 5,000 crore, with a paid-up share capital of 150 crore. Fast forward to the 2025 accelerated framework, and we see exactly what this looks like on the battlefield.
The 2025 data point is fascinating.
It really is. Right now, there is a batch of assets undergoing active valuation, 35,591 square meters. That is roughly 8.7 acres of prime freehold land and buildings belonging to BSNL. And it is spread across 5 southern hubs: Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Kozhikode, Ernakulam, and Mangalore.
Which is incredibly valuable.
Oh yeah, 8.7 acres in the heart of Bengaluru's tech corridor is like finding an empty, untouched gold mine right in the middle of Wall Street.
The choice of those southern tech hubs is entirely deliberate. We are not talking about remote wastelands here. This is highly sought-after urban real estate. But processing that kind of gold mine requires a completely different operational DNA than your standard government department.
Right, they had to build something new.
Exactly. The NLMC was engineered as a special purpose vehicle, an SPV, and crucially, its defining characteristic is that it is a lean organization.
Let's talk about that lean structure for a second.
Yeah.
Because usually when the government sets up a new corporation, it means transferring thousands of permanent bureaucrats, setting up massive new offices, pensions, the whole 9 yards.
Right, which creates its own bureaucratic inertia. But they avoided that. They maintain very minimal full-time staff. The operational strategy is to rely heavily on hiring market professionals on contract.
Oh, I see. So they just bring in the experts they need for specific jobs.
Yeah, we are talking about bringing in private sector real estate valuers, urban planners, commercial lawyers, and this agile team is governed by a board of senior central government officers paired with independent expert directors.
So it's merit-based appointments driving the leadership.
It is. It's essentially injecting corporate agility into what used to be a public sector bottleneck.
That makes a lot of sense. But, while that lean structure solves the staffing issue, it didn't really solve the legal speed limit. I mean, they were incorporated in June 2022, yet we didn't see the massive breakthrough until the 2025 accelerated framework cleared for BSNL, MTNL, and ITI Limited.
Yeah, there was a gap there.
Right. So what was the bottleneck that forced the government to pivot and write a whole new playbook 3 years later?
The trap of the traditional government auction. Historically, government asset disposal has been completely paralyzed by the auction process.
Because it's too slow.
Slow is an understatement. Auctions in the public sector are notoriously bogged down by endless procedural loops, mandatory vigilance checks, and this overwhelming fear of undervaluing public assets.
Oh, right. Because if a bureaucrat sells a piece of land and someone later claims it was sold too cheap, that bureaucrat faces investigations.
Exactly. The safest move for them was often to just not sell at all, which led to repeated auction failures and stalled timelines. The 2025 policy breakthrough acts as a twin-engine system to completely bypass that paralysis.
So they realized auctions were a dead end and built a two-lane highway instead. Lane 1 is handing off the valuation. Explain how that works for these high-value assets.
Well, for assets crossing a specific value threshold, the NLMC takes the appraisal process entirely out of the hands of standard government surveyors. They issue requests for proposals, or RFPs, to impaneled international property consultants, IPCs.
These are global firms, right?
Yes, global firms with deep market intelligence. An IPC doesn't just look at the dirt. They analyze the floor space index, the local zoning laws, the commercial viability. They know exactly what that plot in Hyderabad is worth to a multinational logistics firm or a major tech developer.
But Lane 2 is what really caught my eye in the research. It is a total bypass lane. The new framework allows telecom CPSEs to skip the lengthy auction procedures entirely by giving other central government departments a right of first refusal to acquire these assets directly.
That is the operational game changer. This embodies the principle of ease of governance. It simplifies the transfer process internally before exposing the asset to the open market.
Wait, let me push back on this right of first refusal concept.
Sure.
If BSNL hands over an empty telecom building in Hyderabad to, say, the Ministry of Health to build a research center, aren't we just moving dead weight from the government's left pocket to its right pocket? I mean, how does an internal government transfer actually unlock financial value or fix the economy?
It's a great question. It looks like a pocket-to-pocket transfer on the surface, but the financial mechanics are fundamentally different.
How so?
Well, BSNL is carrying massive legacy debt. When the Ministry of Health exercises its right of first refusal, they don't get the land for free. They acquire it at the market valuation determined by those international property consultants we mentioned.
Oh, I see. So real capital moves from the Ministry of Health's budget into BSNL.
Exactly. BSNL then uses that liquidity to aggressively pay down its debt to public sector banks. This reduces the sovereign guarantee burden on the national exchequer.
Wow. So the left pocket clears a toxic debt. The right pocket gains a productive asset without spending years searching for real estate, and the overall national balance sheet becomes healthier.
Precisely.
I look at this like a massive system of economic recycling. You take frozen, trapped energy idle land, and you melt it down to forge something new. If a private developer buys it, that energy powers private investment, commercial reuse, and job creation. If a government department uses their right of first refusal, that energy powers new public infrastructure incredibly fast. The capital is no longer frozen.
And zooming out, this connects to the broader architecture of national strategy. Clearing BSNL's debt isn't just an accounting trick. It directly feeds into strategic autonomy.
Right, because it frees up their resources.
Yes. By freeing BSNL from its real estate deadweight, the company can pivot its resources toward rolling out indigenous 4G and 5G networks. In an era where telecom infrastructure is a critical pillar of national security, ensuring your public telecom operator isn't dragged down by idle real estate is a strategic imperative.
And then deploying the capital generated from these sales into new social and economic infrastructure is the literal engine of inclusive growth.
Exactly.
But let's step out of the theoretical war room for a moment and look at the mud on the ground. No massive government initiative executes flawlessly. We need a critical evaluation layer here. What are the realistic, on-the-ground limitations the NLMC is slamming into right now?
The most immediate hurdle is geographic desirability, which we call the resource constraint. We keep talking about prime land in Bengaluru, but a massive chunk of that 300 to 400 acres is located in remote, difficult-to-access areas.
Like an abandoned telecom relay shed on a rocky hillside with no connecting highways.
Exactly the scenario. Those remote parcels offer zero clear revenue streams. An international property consultant will evaluate that hillside and report that investor interest is non-existent. You simply cannot command private capital to purchase land it doesn't want.
So they just sit there.
Yeah, the monetization of those remote, low-demand assets will simply stall, falling far short of the projected valuations.
And then there is the hidden trapdoor of Indian real estate, the
Yep.
legal nightmare.
Oh, the legal issues are massive.
Right. We are talking about land parcels that were acquired by the government 40 or 50 years ago. I mean, you are dealing with land deeds that were probably typed on a manual typewriter, filed in a basement somewhere that has flooded 3 times since the 1980s.
Yeah, that's barely an exaggeration.
You can't just throw a for sale sign on the lawn when half the local village claims they own the driveway.
Unclear titles, fierce ongoing litigations, state versus central government jurisdiction disputes. These are the ultimate paralyzers. And outdated zoning restrictions play a huge role too. You simply cannot sell a lawsuit.
No private developer is going to touch that.
Exactly. If the legal title of a massive factory complex is not perfectly, indisputably clear, the entire sophisticated mechanism of the NLMC just grinds to an absolute halt. I mean, the smartest international property consultant in the world cannot sell a disputed asset.
So if we are mapping out a formal policy analysis of this, say, constructing a strategic briefing or drafting an exam argument, how do we structure these moving parts into a cohesive framework?
You build it in 4 distinct phases. First, you establish the context. You always anchor the discussion with the timeline and the institution. So the incorporation of the NLMC on June 3, 2022, acting as a lean SPV under the Ministry of Finance.
Got it. And then you bring in the trigger event, right?
Exactly. The 2025 Accelerated Framework specifically targeting legacy CPSCs like BSNL and MTNL.
Which brings us to phase 2, the operational dimensions, basically the mechanics of the solution.
Right. You outline the twin engine mechanism here. Demonstrate an understanding of how the NLMC leverages impaneled international property consultants to trigger private commercial investment and ensure market-aligned valuations.
And then contrast that with the internal bypass mechanism.
Yes. The right of first refusal that allows government departments a direct sale route, entirely circumventing the procedural quicksand of traditional auctions.
Phase 3 has to be the critical lens, the friction points.
That is where you balance the government's theoretical achievements with ground realities. You highlight the geographic dichotomy, highly desirable urban plots versus unsellable remote parcels. And you must explicitly mention the legal bottlenecks, specifically title disputes and archaic litigation that threaten the transfer velocity.
Which leaves phase 4, the strategic recommendations moving forward. How do we actually fix the friction?
The way ahead requires precise administrative vocabulary. When you write this out, you recommend institutional strengthening.
Meaning the government must establish specialized, fast-track legal tribunals.
Exactly. Tribunals whose sole purpose is clearing up title disputes on CPSC land before the NLMC takes it to market.
Right. You can't sell it if the title is tied up in a 30-year court battle.
Precisely. Then you emphasize the optimization of public-private partnerships by ensuring those international consultants are given broader authority in marketing high-value assets globally.
Okay. And what about the internal bypass mechanism?
That's your third recommendation. You propose expanding regulatory reforms. The 2025 direct sale, right of first refusal route has proven effective for telecom entities.
So the logical next step is scaling that exact framework across all other non-core public sector enterprises.
That's the argument, yes.
Those are fantastic structural pillars. It shifts the perspective from just reading the news to actually analyzing the architecture of governance.
The goal is to see the patterns. The NLMC is not functioning as a glorified real estate broker. It is a highly engineered instrument of statecraft designed to unlock trapped value and re-inject it into the active economy.
Before we sign off, let's crystallize the core mechanics we've uncovered today. Because if you're taking notes or getting ready for an exam, you need these locked in. If you take away anything from this deep dive, let it be these 5 critical anchors.
Let's run through them. Number 1 is the timeline and authority.
Right, June 3, 2022. That's the incorporation of the NLMC under the Department of Public Enterprises, Ministry of Finance.
Number 2 is the financial footprint.
5,000 crore authorized capital and 150 crore paid-up capital. What's number 3?
The structural model. Operating as a lean, special-purpose vehicle, utilizing contracted market experts rather than permanent bureaucrats.
Got it. Number 4 is the 2025 framework. That's the targeted push to liquidate assets from legacy telecom entities like BSNL, MTNL, and ITI. And finally, number 5, the masterstroke.
The right of first refusal, allowing direct internal government acquisition to bypass the dreaded auction trap.
To really test your grasp of the material, I want you to consider this analytical prompt. Evaluate the role of the National Land Management Corporation in achieving the government's strategic disinvestment goals and discuss the primary challenges in monetizing non-core public assets.
And when you formulate your answer, rely on your 5 analytical keywords: monetization, lean SPV, right of first refusal, strategic disinvestment, and productive reuse.
Perfect. But I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. We started today by looking at that map in the war room, with all those red pins representing the ultimate estate sale. But with this new right of first refusal proving so efficient, what happens to the architecture of our major cities if government departments decide they don't want to sell to private developers at all?
It's a fascinating scenario.
Right. What if, instead of tech parks and luxury condos, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, and the defense sectors snap up all this prime real estate in places like Bengaluru and Hyderabad? The map doesn't get privatized. It becomes the foundation for a massive, unprecedented wave of public expansion right in the heart of our commercial centers. The pins on the map don't disappear. They just change color. Keep your eye on those empty buildings. They might just be the blueprint for the next decade of urban transformation.